This question came up this week and I thought it would be worth catching this up. There's a pond here in this model, and we need to determine the contour at which you get the 20% full and 80% of the pond is full, and they want to have that as a stakeout line in the field. And how do you go about doing that? Well, if you take the contour that represents the edge of the pond, I picked this one. You could go a little higher and pick this one, but then you're going to have to determine what happens in this area around this area here. So I'm picking this contour as my reference line for my pond, and everything inside that is my pond surface. So I pick this contour, and then I basically make it into a surface called pond top, and that gives me the volume encapsulation between the top and the finished grade is my pond volume. So if I run the earthwork report on that, what I can do is I can say surface to surface and pick my pond top and pick my finished grade, and then down here I'm going to say do it by elevation level, and you can do it as granular as you want. I'm going to go 0.05 increments, and I don't care about indexing. But in here what you're going to do is we're going to get a calibrated number, if you like, in a report that can tell us the volume at each different depth increment. So if we say OK to this, it's going to run the report for me, and it spits out this report, and this report gives me the elevation range and it gives me the volume in that elevation range. It doesn't give me a accumulated number here, unfortunately. That would be helpful, but anyway, I'm going to go through here and I'm just going to pick all these numbers from this report, and once I've got those I'm going to copy those to the clipboard and then go into Excel, and I'm going to start a new tab, and I'm going to go in here and say paste those numbers in here. And at that point there, what I can do now is I'm going to do an accumulation number. So I'm just going to do cumulative, and I'm just going to say that this equals that number, and then this one equals that number plus that number, and then I'm just going to say take this and copy it all the way down to the bottom. And if we now want to say we want to know 20% of the volume, so if we take equals the total cumulative number, which is the one at the very bottom here, multiplied by 0.2, that gives us that number. And if I take 80%, what's the number there? It's I243, so it equals I243 star 0.8. That's the number I'm looking for here. So now I'm looking for those two numbers in this column. So 3790, that will be around about here. So that's this one. And the other number, what was it? 15160. So I go down to 15160. That's around about here somewhere. And so that's at elevation 103965. And the other one is at elevation 103385. So those are the contours that you need to generate the stakeout information. So we now go into TBC, and we then say go to generate contour elevation, and we're going to type in, we're going to create a new layer here. Let's call it stake percentage lines like this, and let's make it nice and bold. Let's make it red, and let's make it 0.5 thickness so we can see it, and let's put it, leave it there and say close. So we're going to put these on that line. So the contour, the elevated surface we want to contour is finished design, and we want to call this one contour 1033.85, and this is going to be 20%, and you put in the elevation 1033.85 and stake percent lines and say OK. That's the first one done, and then we can run the create contour elevation one more time and say from the surface finish grade we want contour 1039.65, and that's the 80% contour, and you're going to go in here and say 1039.65, put it on that layer and say OK. And that should have given me two lines now. I go to the plan view and I go to that stake lines. So I turn off everything a minute and just turn on that layer, and let's turn off the surface models a minute. So those are my two contours, this one and this one, that I need for staking purposes. And if I then wanted to double check that, I could make a surface model. I could explode those two contours, make a surface model out of them, and once I've made a surface model out of them, I could run the earthwork report between that surface and the finished design, and it should give me the volumes that I'm looking for. So just to show you how to do that, if you go to CAD and you go to explode, and I just pick these two lines and say okay, explode those, that turns them into 3D lines. Then I can say go to surfaces and create surface, and I'm going to call this one 20%, and I'm going to pick this line down here as my 20% line and say apply. That builds me that surface, and then I'm going to say create another one called 80%, and I'm going to pick this line out here and say apply. So that's given me my two surfaces. So now if I look at a quick surface slice through here, turn off the surfaces I don't care about, so I want to keep my pond top, turn off isopac, turn off these two. So now I've got my calibrated, this is my finished grade, this is my 20% line, this is my 80% line, this is my finished pond elevation where it would flood over. And now I've got that information, I could run the earthwork report one more time here, and this time I'm going to just say do me volumes only, do surface to surface, and I'm going to say take the 20% line and finish design and say okay, and that should give me a volume somewhere in the region of 3.7 or 3,700 cubic yards, which is roughly my 20% line. And if I close that out and then I run it again, earthwork report, and I do it between my surface to surface and do it this time 80% to finish design and say okay, that should give me a number somewhere in the region of 15,200, which it is, which is giving me my volume line for my 80% line. So now I can take those two lines, send them out to my data collector and go stake those, and I'll have my 80% and my 20% lines staked in the field. Hopefully that helps. If you've got any questions, please let me know. Thanks.